Okay, welcome to Cooking with Greek People and welcome to our Filmmakers Roundtable, Greek Myths and Media. Before we start, I would like to thank our guests for taking time from their busy schedules and helping support a great cause.
The California Samaritan Foundation, which raises money every year for holiday gifts for orphans at SOS Children's Village in Greece. In the past, the foundation raised money through dinner dances, but that's not possible this year. So we thank you so much for your contributions.
Well, and I thank you guys as well. Our guests are in California and Athens, Greece, and we're so lucky to have them. In California, from Asia Minor Pictures, creators of the Netflix hit show, which has just been renewed, Blood of Zeus, and the writers of The Immortals, we have Vlas Parlapanides and Charley Parlapanides. And in Athens, from the YouTube channel Ancient Greece Revisited, we have Michailidis and Adam Petritsis. And I'd like to welcome all of you and thank you all for being here. And I am going to bring everybody in. And thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. And we're just going to go into audio. And I'm so happy that you guys were able to join us. And I know you guys are all busy, but I wanted to kind of bring this about because I think it's important that we have Greeks from Greece, living in Greece, working in Greece, and Greeks in America, living in America, working in America, and how much more Greek can you get in America other than calling your company Asia Minor Pictures? You know, I mean, you put the stamp on that right there. And so we're so glad to have you guys. And you know, I know we were talking on some things, but I wanted to hit on a couple of topics here because you both have given new life to Greek mythology, in my opinion. You know, both and in different ways with new approaches in storytelling. You know, the approach from the people in California, Vlas and Charley, has really been taking it to a different art style. You know, you're telling stories that take elements from what we're all familiar with and put in this other art style. And from Ancient Greece Revisited, you take this philosophical approach, but yet you give it this kind of like indie cinematic look with these prose that are more poetry than they are. And I thought, I got to get you guys all together in one place and talk a little bit. And Adam, you had some great questions about animation. You want to expand on that a little bit?
No, my question was to Vlas and Charles, whether they were actually involved in the animation process themselves, or how it's done. And
it's an interesting question. It's a very valid question. You know, every project is different. There are times in animation where writers just write the script and then they disappear and then they're happy to see the show 18 months later. That wasn't the approach we took. We wanted to be involved. We also believe that, you know, writing is rewriting, and part of it is when you animate it. And when we would work with the director, Sean, and everyone else at Powerhouse Animations, we would have to figure out how this would all be visualized. And so when they would board the scenes and break out, you know, the episodes into little parts, we got to weigh in and see that process come together. And we wanted to stay involved, and we were involved because, you know, we cared about the story and we wanted the story to be told a certain way. And thankfully we had an amazing director who's a quarter Greek, even though he is also Armenian and has an Armenian name. Sean is a quarter Greek. And so we were able to stay involved, and it was just a great process. And you know, Vlas has mentioned this before in other interviews. This was the first time in our career where we were able to stay involved from the inception of idea all the way to the end, to the delivery of the story. And for better or for worse, this was one project where what we wrote is what ended up on screen. But it was a great process that evolves over time. Animation is very different from TV or you know, features, live action.
And visually wise, how close is the final result to what you had in mind beforehand?
Vlas, do you want to take that one, or?
Sure. Even before we get into that, though, I just want to thank Bob for getting us together. And I just wanted to thank Ted Karnazes for what he does to raise money for SOS. I think it's so incredibly laudable. We know him. He's a really just a great guy, decent man, big heart, hardworking. And, we talk about heroes and we have them in our culture, thank God. But he's a true hero, because again, in our faith, it's all about the deeds, the things that we do. We can say that we're going to do this or do that, but it's what we actually do that truly matters. And so here's someone who has, raised money, over 20 years for such a worthy cause and for kids that need it. We're big proponents. If there's anything that we can do that can make the world a little bit better, we're all for it. And so, Ted's a true hero. Bob for getting us all together and for us supporting Greeks. They're heroes in our book. And, part of this whole project, one of the things that has made us most proud, it's when fellow Greeks say they like the show and that they're happy with the way things were portrayed. It was very important for us to do right by Hellenes in Iliad, Hellenes in Greeks in general. That was very important for us. So I just wanted to share all of that. With regards to did it turn out, as we had envisioned it, it did, because we look at what we write and we look at the stories that we tell from an emotional, I would say, an emotional point of view. And basically when we were writing it, we hoped that it would move people emotionally, that people would be surprised, that people would feel inspired, that people, would be brought to tears. And the show succeeded in doing that. Now, was Hermes or Zeus, in terms of what we envisioned, exactly what we envisioned? No, I think this is a collaborative medium. And thank God we had a very talented director and some very talented artists, from the artists that did the designs to the ones that worked in all different facets of the production. So I credit them for the look of the show. But in terms of it being what we set out to do, yeah, we succeeded by the grace of God in doing it, because it did move us emotionally. It did make us cry. It did make us laugh. It did inspire people. It was, graphic at times, so, that's kind of a long-winded answer. And, we're Greek, so we speak with our hands and we speak too much probably. But I'm curious to hear your story. How did you guys come together?
Yeah, so I'm very happy we're all here, actually. I also had a chance to watch some episodes of Blood of Zeus, and yeah, I've got a lot of questions as well, for sure. But the way our show Ancient Greece Revisited started, I initially conceived it in my head, and at the time I was watching a lot of podcasts, of podcasts in a good way. I watched a lot of YouTube. It was my go-to. I opened the computer first thing, almost mechanically. Just go to YouTube, see what's going on in the world. That was and it was a new medium, and I liked it, and I liked how it disproved a lot of things. I did not have experience with productions, with media on that sense, although I had worked in an animation studio for 2 years. I did aspire at some point to become an animator, but I went as far as being an editor, animatics editor. You probably know what that is. A lot of people don't. It was a lot of fun. It was in London, in the UK, and one of the guys there had also worked in The Simpsons. Allegedly, he was the man who gave Mr. Burns, the factory owner, his Scottish identity. So,
that's great.
So the man who gave Mr. Burns his Scottish identity was my boss for a short period of time.
Our manager, his boss, was one of the creators of The Simpsons.
Wow! Yeah.
So this was meant to be.
Yeah.
exactly. So they must know. And then he went on to do something called Phineas and
Yes.
Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and
yeah,
Ferb.
yeah. So then he became a big star. But apart from this, like shorts thing, I didn't have much experience. But I liked how YouTube disproved a lot of things that we thought given. So, for instance, the long form. I'd watch podcasts for almost 3 hours straight, and and others would also watch it, and there would be no way to sell that, I guess, to a channel. Say I'm going to sit down with a friend and we're going to talk about this geeky subject for 3 hours. And by the way, it's unscripted. We don't know where it's going, and we're going to stutter a little bit. We're going to lose it. There would be no way.
We would watch it, but I don't know about anyone else. But we would.
Yeah. Well, many people would. That's the thing. Many people. What podcasting proved to me is that people are more interested in things that perhaps TV channels would make them would think of them.
It's more real.
Yeah,
it's more real. Yeah, but also the subjects. Like I remember, there was. Yeah, like one show that I was inspired to. Well, I did watch a lot of Joe Rogan Experience.
Yeah.
I did that.
Who's that?
They would go off on a
just
tangent. Yeah. Well, I don't know how famous he is in the US.
He's famous.
He's very famous.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And they would go off on a tangent talking about, I don't know, like some weird nutrition hack that, if you eat 5 peanuts in the morning and then drink a glass of water, then you go this and it will be, and people watched it. And another podcast, not exactly podcast, like show that I was greatly inspired was called Hardcore History.
Yeah.
And Hardcore History again proved that people, to me at least, it proved that people are interested in these things, because the guy did Dan Carlin, I think is his name. He did 4 hours. He did a show on the First World War, and he did 4 hours for each year of that war. So 4 times 4, 16 hours. And I listened, because it was just audio, but I listened to it straight, almost like I would wake up in the morning and be, another year of the war. I would be very excited.
This is the second reason why it also became popular, because you can watch it whenever you want and take it with you.
Exactly.
Well,
So
yes, but when you're the one, Michael, you're the one who writes the show, right?
Yeah.
So let me just to interrupt you for a second. Let me kind of flip this a little bit. How close is what ends up on the screen to what you write? How close? Because you're in a collaborative effort with Adam.
I've been blessed with this way.
No, there you go.
it's the mirror. I'm just trying to find. Yeah,
it's weird. It goes a different way. It goes, it's like that.
Yeah. So I've been.
It's easy for you.
Yeah, I've been very, very lucky because for me, and I'm not trying to praise anyone beyond what they're worth, but it's literally like watching what was in my head come out on the screen, and very few people will have that opportunity, I guess, because making a film, writing a book, traveling the world, everyone wants to do that once. It's one of these common dreams. I want to direct a film, or I want to write a book, right? So for me, and not many people are going to get to do it. So for me, it's a big blessing, because it's literally what was happening in my head. I see it on screen with very, very little friction. So, I take both. I'd also take the blame for what is visual, because what I intended. Somehow, it's not that I'm not the director. I'm not there. I'm not. Although, I'll have my say a couple of times, but it just happens. I don't know exactly how.
It's a blessing, though. Like you said, it is a blessing. It's rare to get that type of synergy, and I think that they're blessing in that you're true to yourself, and Adam was true to himself, and then somehow serendipitously you guys came together, and it's worked out beautifully.
I also think it speaks to something very fundamental in the human psyche, and I think because we live in this over-caffeinated, fragmented, 24/7 news cycle world, that the ability to just focus on a long format and listen and be immersed, I think it's something that was viewed as kind of counterintuitive. And, the world pushed for Quibi and all this other short nonsense. And we always hear about, well, how networks want shows to have the 2-screen experience, where it means literally people are watching and then they're also like tweeting about it. It drives me crazy. It makes me want to smash my computer, because that's not how I think humans are built. I think that drives people crazy. And I think people are yearning to sit around the hearth and sit around the fire and hear these stories and have these long format conversations. And I think that's a very fundamental need you're tapping into. And as you said, Joe Rogan and others in this podcast format has proven that we still need that. As human beings, we need that. And I think that's why people tune into your show and why you tuned in to other shows.
Yeah, exactly. Is what I said before. Like, podcasting proved something, like Wikipedia proved something. It proved that you can have an open encyclopedia and it will not go down the drain. People will respect it and they won't hack it all the time. And podcasting proved that, like you said, although we live in this quick world, and I can almost imagine someone like Joe Rogan or, someone else going to some channel and describing their show, and some TV exec going, no, people want quick. You got to be quick, man. You got to be like sound bites.
Or you got to be 22 minutes.
Exactly, like 10 seconds at a time.
Yeah,
So Netflix literally told us. They literally told us one of the metrics they track. People, if you make it past 2 minutes, they're likely to watch till 6 minutes, and then if you make it past 6 minutes, they're likely to watch to the end. And so they are very aware of when people, and you can see this on your YouTube channel, how long people are watching, but they're very cognizant of these like viewing patterns. And for us, we grew up coming out of the feature business, where once you got someone, you always have to entertain someone, but once you got them in the theater, you knew you had them for 2 hours. And now they're telling us, hey, in 2 minutes, they might, turn off and switch the channel. So make sure you grab them. And it's just very disconcerting. Like, it's a new medium in many ways.
And I just want to say one thing, though. This actually is so enlightening, because for me, just hearing you speak about it, in the world that we live in the world that's so modern, in a world that's so, everything is moving so quickly, it's almost an oral tradition in a way, where a podcast is immersive and you're telling something, almost pretty much you're telling a story, basically. And it works. So almost on the one hand, we are very surprised that it worked, but on the other hand, we shouldn't be surprised, because this has endured,
Correct. Yeah.
Thousands of years.
You went back to your roots.
Yeah.
Well,
That's a great way of seeing it. Yeah.
And there's but there's an approach you guys have taken, because I see similarities in kind of like these approaches, because you guys both of these teams kind of delved into Greek mythology, but they didn't get lost in it. You were able to find your voice in it, and it comes out on the screen, which is, which isn't like, I've watched Disney, I think, is coming out with, Percy Jackson, I think right now, or I think they are.
They're going to do a live action TV show, a TV version.
Yeah, TV version. But one of the things that, to me, those movies kind of got lost in the noise, of all of the gods, all of the powers that they have, all of the, it was, to me, there was just so much noise. But you guys have kind of figured out a way to find your voice in these characters, in these and kind of present them in a way that you don't get lost, at least for the viewer, for me,
Well, I'd say their shows are much more insightful than what our show was. And we heard Michael's side of it, but I'm curious to hear Adam's side of it too.
Okay, so basically, to reach the point that Michael says we are now, the reason is that we've moved beyond the point of Michael, in quotations, trying to sell his vision to me, and now his vision has become also my vision, in a sense.
That's great. That's great.
Basically, it's like I feel it's also kind of my show as well. So
yeah,
from the beginning,
you better. You better feel that.
Well, it shows. No.
From the beginning, the first time we met through a producer that I'm working with, and he basically told me about his idea, blah, blah, blah. He showed me 3 of his first episodes that he wanted to do as a pilot. And when I read them the first time, I saw that there was something different in it.
Oh, that's
they were short, concise, and with something new air, let's say, that they brought out to me. And so we decided to do those first 3 episodes as a pilot, and it turned out, well, as it did. And from that point on, basically, like Michael says, it's all history. We moved forward, and it became what it is now. But like I said last time to Bob, the most interesting thing on Michael's approach and writing is that, in my head at least, he chooses subjects that are not unique on their own. They are subjects that we know, that we learned in school, blah, 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 that we hear about. But he takes it from a different perspective that what we are used to. And sees a different angle in these very well-established subjects, let's say, which brings up new ideas, new way of seeing things, let's say, kind of. And it's part of what is in Michael's head, because the idea is to bring the vision of the ancient Greeks as the people themselves saw the ancient world anyway.
It's
How
also
they lived it.
smart because he takes something that's familiar, so that helps the audience. Like, oh, I'm familiar with that, and then by going in with the approach that he goes in, it's interesting and engaging. So you attract the person, and then you hold them because you're taking it from something that's a novel approach. So it's also very smart.
Another thing that I wanted to also say now, because it has to do with what you do as well. What we were afraid, and we still are, we always be about that, is that when you talk about subjects like ancient Greece, specifically in my head, ancient Greece, but also anything that has to do with the ancient world, you are playing with the chance of it being kids.
Yeah.
You use the word kids as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I totally understand what you're saying. Totally.
Yeah. So it's always a case of how to present something to not look, basically, let's say, stupid.
Yeah.
And one way to do this is with what you do. Animation, I think, is one of the best ways to present the ancient world, in a sense, in my head at least, because it's, let's say, a new form that it's not set in your head. So it's something new, as it should be, let's say, when you talk about something that you have no idea in reality how it was at that time, because you have no actual pictures of that time. I mean, of how people were actually in that time.
We stole Michael's idea. We said, hey, that's a good idea. Let's take something that people know, and then let's just approach it from a novel point of view. So thank you, Michael.
Because like I said, Adam had to correct me at some point, because as I was presenting our show to various people, for some reason, I would always say it's novel subjects on ancient Greece or something like that, and Adam had to correct me like on one of the presentations. Said, no, it's not novel. The points are not the way is novel. The points, and at that moment I said, yeah, you're right. It's almost like he corrected me on my own idea.
It's a good synergy, a good team.
Yeah. Because it's like always, you do something, and perhaps someone else needs to tell you what it is that you're actually doing. So, yeah.
It happens to us all the time.
I can imagine. Yeah, I mean, I'm the newest, in the space, and it's very interesting also how much you have to learn, because especially writing, which is what I'm mainly doing, is something that everyone can do. It's like walking, right? But just like there's competitive walking, there's competitive writing, and it's surprising how much I changed and improved, I would like to think, over just 1 year of doing it almost full time, because it's something so common. You can pick up, so to speak, a pen. Well, nowadays you probably type and just start writing. You don't need anything, any degree, any training, and everyone can do it. Everyone learns how to do it. And because everyone can do it, you tend to think it's easy and there's no real skill involved. At least that's how I thought subconsciously. But I read things that I wrote a year ago and I'm like, no.
Narrative writing is a muscle. And the more you use it, just like if you go to the gym and you exercise, the more you use that kind of narrative mind and that writing, the stronger you get. And you will just continue to get stronger. And I never think writing is easy. We always say there's a great saying amongst writers here, sometimes you slay the dragon and sometimes the dragon slays you. There are times where you have great aspirations and you feel like you know what you're going to write. And sometimes you're able to achieve that. And other times, you don't. The dragon gets you. And it's very interesting. I was just listening to Scott Frank, who wrote Queen's Gambit, which is an amazing miniseries, easily the best 7 hours of content I've seen this year. And he said every time, he goes, one of the hardest things he had to learn as a writer is that each time out, it doesn't get easier. It's equally hard. And you would think like, oh, I have all this experience. And he wrote, Out of Sight, which is like a modern classic. And he wrote Get Shorty, and he's been nominated for an Oscar. Each time he sits down, it is equally hard. It never gets easier. And in that sense, I think writing can be very humbling. But it is something we can all do. And the one thing that I know is very true in the writing community here in Hollywood is that the other disciplines are very competitive. And there isn't that sense of camaraderie or kind of, brothers and sisters in arms. But with writing, there is, because one, you don't need anyone's permission. If you want to write a story, you just have to sit down and do it. And two, fundamentally and truthfully, everyone can only write the stories they were meant to write. There are times where you are competing for an assignment where, everyone's trying to get the adaptation of Percy Jackson or whatever job it is. And in that sense, it can be competitive. But in some degrees, it's still not, because we're pitching our version and our friend is pitching their version. And, whoever the studio likes more or whoever has the most heat, sometimes in our business, that's how it works. That's who's going to get the job. But the one thing I will add to Bob's question, though, is that we always say this is not our story. Blood of Zeus is not our story. This is Greece's story. And we are so lucky, the cultural inheritance that we stand upon. I mean, again, we're very biased. We're all Greeks here. But we've read other, world mythologies. And I think the Greeks put them to shame, the ancient Greeks. And then you get into, the classical Greek world and the philosophers. Like, people forget that not only when they believed in the Olympians, there was this incredible thinking. There was the school of Athens. There was, Socrates. There was the cave. Like, it is just such an abundance of riches. And we are so proud to be Greek. And I think that I know Vlas and I, we're the benefactors of our rich cultural heritage. And we just thank God for the ancients, and we thank God for the Greeks in general.
Very well said. And it's just to switch it on the topic of mythology, because I'm sure Bob would love to actually get to the
doing
meat of
this
it.
right now. So I've got my questions, but they're not as good as yours. So keep going.
Yeah, I mean, just on that, it's interesting because I do think there's something very special. And me, I grew up in a Greece that was trying very hard to become European, Okay, and so it was very fashionable to almost feel yourself like a world citizen. You know, unfortunately, we're not going to get into this. Of course, it's a very sensitive topic. It was very easy to become suspicious of overly praising your country. You know, being overtly nationalistic,
Proud.
perhaps.
The opposite
So,
here.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, in Greece it was, and I guess the first kind of direction for me, you know, into storytelling, mythology, even like spiritual, was the East. You know, I was fascinated with mythologies of, well, either Egypt for sure, and you know, India, or the gods, the philosophy there, meditation. Although I did very little practical meditation, I read a lot of books on this culture, and I had to come back. Although I was living in Greece, you know, I had to come back to Greece and finally realize exactly what you said, that there is something very special, to the degree that I can say, yeah, they are the best myths, at least for me. And I'm trying to unpack it and understand why, you know, obviously I'm not going to get to the bottom of this, but one thing I can say is that there's an incredible amount of both fantasy and logic that you don't get in other mythologies. Other mythology, once you know Greek mythology, other mythologies seem very surreal, very like a Salvador Dali, you know, painting. Like things just happen for no reason, you know. In some, I know some Native American myths, for example, where you know the hero finds like an eagle's feather, and therefore he can fly.
Yeah.
Just because he has an eagle's feathers, wings, flight, some connection is there. But if you go to the Greek equivalent, you find, you know, the myth of Icarus,
Yeah.
and how the wings of Icarus, the mechanical wings, were constructed. It almost reminds you of like a Da Vinci, you know, drawing. And it
And
could
his
almost
father,
work.
Daedalus, he was like the Tony Stark of the ancient world. He created all these
Exactly.
magnificent weapons.
Yeah.
He was, you know, all these different city-states wanted him for his talents. Like, you
Yeah.
know, those stories, I smile because the idea for the Blood of Zeus was born out of the idea we wanted to do. I don't know if you guys have it in Greece, this show called American Horror Story, where it's 10 episodes, and every season they do a new kind of horror story.
Yeah.
And we wanted to do the Greek myths, but tell them as they were originally told, and take 10 episodes and start with Icarus and Daedalus and how he's accused of murder, and they have to flee Athens. And he is this weapons, you know, creator that everyone wanted, you know, his skills, and he's forced to go to the Minoans down in Crete. Like, we had this whole story mapped out. People, when you look, it's so funny, Michael. We've looked at other mythologies, and I don't mean this to be disparaging in any way, but when you kind of lift the hood and see, like, what are really the bones of this story about, they don't hold water the way the Greeks do, the Greek stories.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not there. The substance is just not there.
Yeah.
Well,
They could almost be real. That's the thing.
This takes me to my question, which is that, you know, except for Adam, none of you really started off as filmmakers. You know, you guys had other careers, and you were drawn to your passions. I was kind of curious to see what surprised you most about writing these Greek mythical figures. I mean, and I think you're kind of on that topic now, because, you know, you point out that, you know, when you look at Icarus and Daedalus was like the Tony Stark of the ancient world, you know, refortifying the Minoan palace, creating the labyrinth, doing, you know, that to me, I didn't think of it that way, but that would have been a surprise. What surprised you guys, because you came out of a different world?
Well, for me, what surprised, you know, to answer the question, what was most surprising, and it shouldn't have been a surprise because these mythological tales have endured the test of time, but I was surprised by how relatable people felt the characters were. And again, that shouldn't have been a surprise because they have a lot of relatable qualities. But we had this interview with a critic. She was from Texas. She was Mexican. She was a woman, and she related to Heron in a way that really made us smile, because she said that, you know what, I have a lot of anger. I am being minimized in many ways. I am, minimized in a way, and it makes me angry. And I have to be careful that I keep that anger in check, and that I don't let that anger in any way diminish me, in any way hurt me. And I have to use that in a positive way. So the fact that that character was relatable to her, and in fact even almost inspiring to her, was just surprising, and it was also endearing, and was also something that made us feel really good. Because if you can tell a story that in any way can make someone feel a little bit better and can help them a little bit on their journey in life, I mean, that's a home run. That to us is more important than winning some type of award or something like that. It's so I was surprised by that. I'm curious to see what the rest of what you guys think.
Yeah, I saw that interview, by the way.
Kate Sanchez.
Mama's in the title, I think, right?
No, it was Sanchez.
Kate Sanchez. Kate Sanchez. She's a Rotten Tomato critic. She was great, and she really
great
loved
critic,
the show.
very smart. Very.
Bob, what I'll just say very quickly, and then I'll let Michael jump in because this answer's short. What I'm surprised is that people haven't. I think Greek mythology is a treasure trove of what they refer to here as IP, intellectual property. I know it's public domain, but if I was a billionaire or if I ran a studio, I would take the Marvel approach and say, I don't care about anything else. We can mine this. There are TV shows, movies, miniseries. There are so many. There are 3 or 4 myths that I know as a writer, the story arc is there for it to be an amazing movie. There are other ones that I know could be great TV shows. But part of it is when you work in our business, and you have to pitch people and win them over, there's this idea, because there's been 5 versions of Hercules and there was Xena, and some of this stuff, as Adam has said, now sometimes can feel kitsch. I don't think the material is kitsch. The execution that some people have had with it, no offense to their iterations of it, has been kitsch. But that stuff is as relevant and vibrant and as relatable today as it was thousands of years ago. And if I was running a studio, I would, again, we pitched this Greek mythology show where you take 10 episodes to tell. I would do that. I would just be mining Greek mythology in every way possible. That's what surprises me, that more people aren't doing it.
You could start directing Greek mythology movies at 20, and by the age of 70, you wouldn't even be halfway through.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's not even hyperbolic. That's like true.
Yeah. Can I give you, since we're on this topic?
Imagine Woody Allen doing every year one.
Yeah, I think, Adam, you're onto something. I think that's something you should jump into.
Yeah, 20.
That's right. We could do that. Yeah, but I think you're so right, because there are stories that are almost glossed over. Like I was watching one of your episodes, Michael and Adam, the one on Jason and the Argonauts, where and I know for Aurora and me and John, it's our favorite thing that you guys have done. But it's like there's so much to these stories, because here you have Jason. I think he's on the island of Limnos, and he's being, and the women there have just killed their husbands, because their husbands came back from a raiding party and they brought back these beautiful slaves, these women that they were going to marry. So these women killed them. That alone is a 7-season miniseries, like series. Just that story, and it is so, I got to be careful.
And that's 1/100th of Jason and the Argonauts, and you could make that 7 episodes. Just that little paragraph you just pitched, Bob.
Yeah. And let's remember that all of these epics, there were combinations of stories, and so there's no, like a tip to, I guess, screenwriters out there. There's no shame in rejigging a story, taking a piece there and a piece from another place, because that's exactly what these poets did. Homer did not compose the Iliad in one sitting or in 10. Most of these stories pre-existed. He found, I guess, an angle that connects these stories in a specific way. But a lot of these myths pre-existed. They were a staple. And remember, and I'm very fascinated about this idea of epic poetry and the place that the epic poet had in ancient Greek society. The other side is as well, but in ancient Greek, for sure, where it was one of the highest paid professions. And you don't think about this because we tend to think of the past as a little primitive, a little, at least more primitive. So the poet, because we think of poetry as decorative, you do what's necessary, and perhaps you save some time. But it's interesting how these very ancient people had poetry as one of their highest profession, and the people would train for many years until they would become an epic poet. And I'm just wondering, I can't stop thinking about what exactly were they training in, what was that training, and that perhaps in itself can be something to write about. The making of a Homer, for instance, the training as he would be. I can almost imagine like a scenario where it would be about Homer the man, as he would be training and learning all these myths in some version, and as he's learning these myths, you're seeing some of them come alive, but they don't have this angle that he found, because Homer found an angle that kind of pierced a lot of Greek myths together and made them what they were, So it was a hard work, a lot of training, that they had to learn all these myths again and again and memorize them, so they would almost like a live performance, like slam poetry, I can imagine. And they would, some, depending on the theme, whether there was a wedding or a funeral or someone came back from battle, and these poets would just almost conjure up a story at will. Yeah,
it's amazing how far
repository, of knowledge.
It's amazing how far we've come, because now the measuring stick is utility. In terms of that's what we value. Our utility and what we bring to a society, and so and it's amazing. Like now, poetry doesn't have that utility in terms of, well, what do you make with that? But no, that was something that was very important. And it also just kind of, just hearing you speak about that, just how much more people were able to memorize back then. They were able to, I mean, where's my iPhone? How do I get to this place or what place? I've gotten lazy, and it bothers me. I really feel like my memory isn't what it was, before using. I'm just so dependent on the stupid iPhone. In addition to that, and Charlie and I talk about that, how these soldiers, they would march, and how people even back then, how far they could march, traverse from place to place, and they were so much stronger than we were, and they had such better memories than we have. And,
and memory, that's a very interesting subject that you mentioned, because memory is not memory is not recall. I think now we're so immersed in technologies that we even use technology as a metaphor for how we function. It's almost like we've become a metaphor of technology. So we treat our own memory like a hard drive. We treat our eyes like a screen, and we say, the human eye is like a 50 millimeter lens. And the
Adam, is that correct? Is it 50 or 25? I wouldn't know.
I think 50 is more.
I've heard Adam say 50, so I'm just regurgitating.
Michael, though, I think Adam wants to say something, so I don't want to step on his toes. But the one thing I think is fascinating, I read this research report, and what cognitive psychologists have learned is that memories are forged when they are tied to emotion, and our ability to recall memories are tied to emotion. So Vlas and I, we pitch all the time. It's about a 20, 30-minute pitch. And part of it is, if you have to memorize a story that is an hour long or more than an hour, it better be seeped in emotion, or else you will not remember it and the audience won't remember it. And so I just think it's interesting that when sometimes the form dictates the almost the product and the approach you have to take to it and what is then required. And it's another thing that you raised that is also very important, is that the Greeks valued storytelling. Even if you look past the mythological into the great playwrights, the citizens of Athens were required go to listen to the plays. It was their duty as citizens of the city-state. They couldn't just say, this wasn't something like, hey, let's go to the movies and pass some time. They were required, or else they'd start getting, chips in their pots and they could be exiled from the city-state. And so it's important that I think one of the greatest societies that ever existed, that gave the West these fundamental bedrock ideas, they valued listening to stories and seeing plays and contemplating these very important ideas. They weren't just about utility. They thought about, big ideas and big emotions and big themes. And I think that's why it carries over today. And they tied them to emotion, because that's the only way you can remember an hour-long play.
And it was for everyone. Everyone, the most common of commoners, would listen to those plays and was educated and can speak about and entertain all these different ideas. That was also fascinating.
Yeah, on this very quick note, this is exactly what I'm saying to myself and to a lot of screenwriters, writers, storytellers who think that people are just not going to get them. Nowadays, there's this frustration. Yeah, they say, oh, people nowadays, they don't care, or they watch too much TV, or they watch. And I'm like, Shakespeare, wrote for people who could not sign their name. Yeah. Homer wrote for people who knew their world was like a patch of land and 50 sheep. Okay. And for the philosopher, right. Homer moved Socrates and the shepherd boy of 15. Yes. So how can you say that people are not on your level to understand you?
They know better than Homer.
Yeah, it's almost like they know better than Homer or better than Shakespeare. But please, Adam, you were saying something.
No, I've been thinking the last days about something, but I don't know exactly how it will fit in what we're saying now. But it has to do with, and what we want to do in AGR, like to bring out the vision of the people that lived in ancient Greece, not anyone else, but the people actually lived there, like the man,
daily experience,
the man, the warrior, every single man. When you think about ancient Greece, when you ask someone about ancient Greece, and apart from the famous things like the Parthenon, the Athens, the Acropolis, perhaps democracy and philosophy, the first thing that probably comes to mind is Greek myths and everything that has to do with the 12 gods of Olympus and everything that surrounds this. So the big image we have about ancient Greece is basically myths. And what I want to say is, if the image we have is only that, which is on a higher level, let's say it's more perhaps, I don't know, divine or something, I don't know how to describe it. How were the people that actually lived during those times, how did they perceive that whole picture of that whole mythology thing, and how much of it did they perhaps feel as it was real or not real? Or, I mean, this is more fascinating for me to.
Yeah, I think that's
understand the psyche of the people living in those times, because some of them were the people that created these myths.
Yeah, there's a common vision for sure that binds us. Yeah.
So
those were bigger than life. The gods were bigger than life,
But they were pious, though. The ancient Greeks were very pious.
Very,
they were
very
devout.
Yes.
And I'll never forget, there's a great line you guys talk about, how did the people feel? And I forget where I read it, but they said, like, you'll never know the fear of the gods until your existence is dependent on that summer's harvest. And that's something we take for granted. Like, these people didn't know whether they were going to survive, whether they were going to live. So damn straight they were going to pray to the gods and hope that they had a bountiful harvest, because then they wouldn't survive the winter. And so, it's getting in that mindset of living in that world that I think you guys do a great job, because the way, in a lot of ways, emotionally, we have not evolved that much in thousands of years, but in many ways, the way we live has changed in a way that we can't even imagine. Even our papus and yayas, the way they lived in Greece. I was talking to my petera. She was talking about collecting rainwater and drinking the rainwater. And I wouldn't even let my daughter do that now. But, my mother-in-law, growing up outside of Kalamata, that's what they did. And that was not so long ago. You know what I mean? But they were very pious, and they took their faith very seriously.
Yeah, and that's actually
one more thing. To sum up, basically, my idea in my head is what would be more fascinating in my head is, let's say, if we said ancient Greece is a box, and mythology is what surrounds that box. Instead of looking from outside of the box inside, it would be more fascinating to see from inside the box to outside. So to see from basically the people living there out.
Absolutely. If you look at it from the eyes of the common person.
As I said, that's what I like about your approach, is that you, and it's in your mission statement, is that you're not looking at it in like this British whitewashed way. And I can't remember your quote in your mission statement, but you're peeling away this facade that was really introduced to us by these Phil Hellenes, these British, and just kind of like the peeling away they peeled away the color from the statues. It's like
because there's two ways to hide something. One is to take it off site, and one is to put it right in your face. And it's very difficult to see what's right in your face. And ancient Greece has been right in our faces as, Europeans, Greeks first, Europeans, Westerners. We're told about it in school, we're told and retold, most people know at least the names of Zeus, Hercules, but that's also a way to obscure it so that you can't see it clearly anymore, because it's too close. And we forget that image that we've been shown is an interpretation of ancient Greece, and it's an interpretation that was perfect for what it was developed, which was to tie in, the emerging nations of Europe as they emerged in the Renaissance and in the Enlightenment, to tie them to the legacy of ancient Greece, to weave the narrative almost like the Old and the New Testament, create these double references from the past to the present to the past. And so they could say, look, we have the torch now, we are. And it was an interpretation. It was an interpretation that served their purpose very well. But it's not necessarily the interpretation that's going to serve our purpose. Again, as Greeks or as modern Europeans or as Americans, as Westerners, because and like you said, Kyriakos, it's like a wellspring, and you can go and dive in and you realize it's different than what you thought it was. And the first thing I tell people when they ask me, what should I read? And they mostly think of, I don't know, something like a book that's going to unpack everything that happened in ancient Greece for them. But I'm like, go to the sources, read the actual texts, read Homer's Iliad in a good translation or in the original, and just read that, and you're going to definitely take home something that you never thought was there, and no one else told you. That's the amazing thing, that you go, you read, and you go, and you just see something that no one else has seen in the same story that we've been told and retold, you know.
I love that. And but just also going back to Adam's point, if you're just this common Greek citizen, or if you're this farmer, or if you're this shepherd, whatever it may be, you had to make sense of the world. So think of that individual the first time they see a volcano, the first time they see lightning. And even as Charlie said, sometimes, like, you know, it was a harsh, cruel world. You had to make sense of it somehow. So, lightning. Oh, well, that stems from Zeus, and he's able to wield lightning. And of course, he's going to be his realm is going to be the sky. And a volcano. Oh, there was a great war between, say, the gods and the Titans. You had to make sense of things, and that's very interesting because we forget about how precarious the world was back then, and so they needed to make sense of things. And they did.
The idea too, this idea that if you weren't hospitable, that that you would anger the gods, and that Zeus would be angry at you. Well, part of it is because there was no police. So if someone came to your house and robbed you, or you went to their house and they robbed them, like, there was no one you could call. But if you had the fear of the gods, if you instilled that into culture, in some ways it was used also as a way to form cohesion and to form rules and to form structure. And it was a way to imbue ideas into society. And so, because we have to forget, our world is not exactly like the world people lived in 2,500 years ago. Again, we haven't evolved that much emotionally, but it was a very different world. It was a very different time, and so every time you go in and you look at it, you pull something new and very human out of it. I've never gone back and been like, it's always like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and remember, if you read something like the Iliad, for example, which was the closest thing the ancient Greeks had to a Bible, you will find everything that later flourished and became ancient Greece in one text. So you'll find, the epic poetry, that style that was loved by the Greeks, right? You'll find the names, the heroes. In the second Rhapsody, which is supposed to be the most boring rhapsody, it's called The Catalogue of Ships, would be the subtitle. And you have a list, a catalogue of all the cities that sent ships to fight against Troy. And in great detail. Athens said 15 ships of that type, each with like 30 men holding this type of weapon, and thieves. And it's boring for us, but remember that you would find yourself and your city in there where you were from. In Greece, whether the Cretan, the Athenian, the Theban, the Spartan, wherever you were from in Greece, you'd be, that's me there, these are my ancestors. So this book kept almost like the spike to a wheel, the beams from breaking apart. I went to Malta not a long time ago, and I realized what a strange language they have there. And I learned that it's actually a form of Arabic, but it's a form of Arabic that's not spoken anywhere else, and it's not understood by any other Arabic speaker, because a Moroccan and a Saudi can more or less communicate mutually, from what I understand, but a Maltese, who's like in the middle, can't. And the reason is that they became Christian. So the Quran, which was read and reread by all Arab-speaking people, it's like home. It keeps the wheel from breaking apart. And the Moroccan language and the Saudi language, they have the centrifuge of becoming just separate languages, but you have the Quran that they keep on reading, and that keeps everything, this culture, in place. And that spike, was Homer's Iliad for the ancient Greeks and for the ancient Greek cities that could have developed very differently and perhaps even been speaking different languages, but they didn't, because they would come back to these texts and they would learn their language from these texts. So all the cities were kept in orbit, so to speak.
That's cool. That's absolutely spot on.
I still don't understand Cypriots though, so I don't know what connects us to them. Sometimes when they talk, I can't understand, but that might be because we were born and raised in America. So
I've heard that Homer was from Asia Minor. Michael, have you heard that, or is that just something is that true? Is that not true? Do they know where he's from?
Yeah, no one knows exactly where he's from. He's definitely from somewhere there. He could have been in one of the Greek islands. He could have been from one of the places in Asia Minor. There were a lot, even in ancient Greece. It's not a modern problem. Even in ancient Greece, different places would claim him as their own. They wouldn't know. But close to that, it's actually very interesting to ask what age he was describing. Because obviously it's a myth, and obviously, although not too many magical things happen, that's another very interesting thing in ancient. Like I said before, the myths are real in ancient Greece. You don't have surreal things happening. You have the gods, but even when they present themselves, they present in a very human form. You don't have dragons in ancient Greece. Well, in the Iliad, at least, But so a question that surrounds Homer is this culture that he's describing in the Iliad and in the Odyssey. Like, when was it historically? And there's a few theories, but it seems to be almost like a mishmash of different Greek cultures. Homer will describe chariots, war chariots, for instance, that are, a staple in what's called, like Indo-European mythology. You find them in India, in the Bhagavad Gita, the chariot warriors in the Assyrians. But he doesn't really know how they're used, Homer. So he'll describe these warriors mounting their chariots, driving them to battle, and then dismounting and fighting hand to hand. Because, so it's almost like some memory was left that once upon a time our ancestors had these chariot things that they were very prized, but he didn't know.
I wish we could do that as writers, like something, and then they just drive to this place, and then he drives away afterwards. You don't have to describe how that is.
It might happen. It might happen. Some thousands of years later, they won't know. They'll miss something very crucial. Maybe they'll know that we were using mobile phones, but they won't. Perhaps they won't understand that you can also text someone. They'll think it's just phones. So they might have a world where people call on the mobile phone, but still write letters to each other.
Maybe it would be interesting. It would be interesting, maybe, to describe. That Homer, the hip hop episode, kind of, if you want.
Yeah, like that's one idea that I try to work and rework, so as not to make it kitsch, basically. But the idea, actually, I've given you all the elements that I need, so I'm just going to put them together, because I've said how an epic poet was almost like a slam poet. He would improvise on a stock of myths, and he would be called to recite something, to make up a story and say it on the spot, and then the stories were half real, half mythical, some mixed, and that whole thing reminded me very much of hip hop. Because in hip hop it's not like, the connection there is that hip hop is an art form that carries with it an entire world. Okay, so hip hop was created in the United States, in deprived, I guess, black neighborhoods, and so
there's a cultural component to it. There's no doubt.
Yeah, so it's two things in one. It's an art form. It's a way of speaking and a way of following the rhythm with your words. But it also inevitably carries like a frozen world of these black ghettos. In theory, you can rap about, I don't know, Santa Claus. You know, you can rap about anything. But most people, when they are introduced and when they take on this genre called hip hop, they also take on these stories, these almost myths of these black ghettos, because they come hand to hand. As the art form formed, it's almost like it throws a piece of that world with it. Okay. And similarly, when epic poetry was getting formed, it was just when Greece was becoming civilized, and these warring tribes were slowly morphing into the city-states that would become Greek antiquity. And as this forge was dipped into the water and froze and took its final shape, that was Greece, and epic poetry took this final form, it ripped a piece of the old world of the tribal warlords. It froze it together with the art form, so that when you speak one, you speak the other. When you speak epic poetry, it almost like the words, the rhythm, the names get you back into this frozen world that predated the Greeks. So, a life world was frozen inside the art form. So I make this connection in hip hop as well. I think that, nowadays hip hop has been downplayed a lot because it's seen as glorifying criminal life, basically. And to a certain degree, it does. Of course it does. It mythologizes people that you wouldn't want to hang out with. In actual reality, you wouldn't want your children to hang out with. But if you go back to Homer's epics and you just see them, with very clear eyes, these were also very brutal times. And Homer the poet found an angle that was honorable, noble, inside a world that you wouldn't necessarily want to live in the raw, in the actual reality of that world. People would live short, violent lives. But Homer the poet saw something, and he speaks about a world that's not objectively noble, but is made noble. And perhaps even with hip hop, that can be done. It's not the material, like I said, the art form, whether epic poetry or hip hop, inevitably will draw the world in which it was created with it. It comes part and parcel. When you speak epic poetry, you speak of warriors in single combat with the gods watching. When you speak hip hop, you speak of pimps and drug addicts, and criminals. But it doesn't mean that it cannot be lifted up to higher ideals as well.
Yeah.
Can't speak to that. Don't know that as well. So I can't, say.
I mean, it's just a thought. I went off on a tangent here. I understand, but
I understand what you're saying. There's look, I can watch Troy, with Brad Pitt, but that doesn't mean I'd want to live it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think I'd be able
to be Brad Pitt, but you don't want to.
Thank you, Aurora.
Sorry.
Thank you, co-host. But no, I see it. Hey, we are. I told you guys an hour, and we're an hour and 15. I know it's kind of getting a little bit late, and you guys, do you guys want to wrap it up with some final thoughts here? And
I'd be curious to get what's your process like, Michael and Adam? I was just curious. What's the process? Is it just you bounce, ideas off each other? Is it you wake up in the middle of the night and you have this idea, you jot it down? Is it just kind of like what you're doing now, which is just it's writing? It's like you keep thinking about something, keep thinking about it until it becomes fully realized. I'm just curious what your process is.
The writing is all Michael.
Yeah,
right.
So I'm usually the first in the factory line.
But
And
do you bounce off ideas off of Adam, or is it just okay? You just keep thinking it through yourself, and then finally the finished product you hand it over? Is that how it works?
So far, it's been very linear. So far, so I've been coming up with ideas, writing, and then perhaps there's a bit of a bounce between me and Adam, and then the realization, the editing, it's very linear. But for me,
I leave the story to Michael. I just comment on things that might not be very well apprehensible to or comprehensible.
No, but you guys had some beautiful music to this, and there seems to be some art direction involved as well.
We have a very talented musician, Penny Bignari, and she's writing original music for each episode for us.
That's
Wow.
so important.
which I thought was overkill in the beginning because I was so naive about production. I just thought, a webcam and some ready-made music and you're good to go. And the first time I heard music on write music on the edit, I was like, that's what Hollywood studios do. Like, why bother? But it does. I mean,
you brought this up because actually music plays a big part in all films and documentaries and everything. It's a game changer.
Bigger than you think initially as a layman. You don't.
There's
like space.
But there's also artwork that you guys deploy there too. I mean, I see there's got to be some sort of graphic artist that you're using as well, because some of the things that's all you, is it, Adam? Wow. Okay.
The editing is me. Most of the graphics that we do, it's mine. We have we are buying stock footage. Some of it we are filming on ourselves.
Wow.
We don't have a budget, basically. We are doing it with no budget.
You have a location. Your locations you have Greece as a location.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a fantasy for the rest of us.
And that was also conscious. So what we wanted to avoid is the very stereotypical standing in front of a statue or an ancient Greek temple pointing. That's what we wanted to avoid. And Greek scenery was the alternative. Just be in Greek nature, whether mountain or sea. I had to realize that it's very difficult to film next to the sea because of all the noise. I could have never imagined before I started the production. But from a certain distance, I guess you can still do it.
We have a theme of trying to portray the divine in a sense of UV lights. If you've seen some of our shots that are actors with UV lights, some of them are bought stock footage. Some of it we have filmed ourselves, and I think it's something interesting, which gives a new dimension.
Yeah, we wanted to portray. Yeah, the idea was to portray the divine, whatever was happening, as like we talked about Homer, and you switch between the mortal and the gods all the time. And visually, we wanted to portray this cut using these UV lights, using this almost psychedelic version, again trying to avoid this whitewashed, going against it. We wanted to use this psychedelic version, which would combine the unprecedented and a bit of the tragic, so it would be weird but not funny. It would be somewhere between sublime and scary, and we're still trying to figure out the technical details of doing a full UV shot. We've done one to a certain degree, but it's more involved. It's more involved than we thought.
Well, gentlemen, listen.
I just want to say, Bob, before we wrap up, I just want to say for any of the orphans that may be watching, and just remind everyone to please donate to, SOS, and for any of the orphans, and if they're going through a difficult time, and where they are or they aren't, just to be reminded of our ancestors. And we have the DNA of our ancestors, and that DNA has proven that we're a resilient people, and the people that can carry on, and the people that has overcome tremendous amount of adversity. So always remember that, and always have that, and hold on to that. And no matter what they're going through, whether it's now or in their, in their lives in the future, to remember that, and to always have hope and always work hard. And again, we can lean back and be proud of our ancestors because we have that resiliency that they have.
I want to give a shout out again to Ted because, he's very much lived the American dream. I have so much respect for him, the way he's raised his families, the way his sons have educated themselves. It's just really laudable. But he's also kept that philotimo and he's, kept that ideal of helping others and having that pride to help others and rise above and do what's right. And I know that the Greeks in Greece have suffered, the past 15 years with austerity. Even the average Greek is suffering. It's ridiculous sometimes when I see what they've been asked to shoulder. And I think any other country would have broken their spirit. But somehow the Greeks have endured. We've endured slavery under the Ottomans. We've endured strife and struggle. And so, and yet we still have that philotimo, and we still have fought to stay honorable and do what's right. So I hope people will take this time to make a contribution and to help this worthy cause, and especially us Greeks that are spread across the world. We have to always remember our homeland and the Greeks there, and the plight they're going through. So I hope people will remember that, especially for this charity and for Greece in general, because I know this year, I'm sure with COVID, has not been an easy year, and 15 years of austerity. And as soon as the doors open, we all have to go. We all have to spend money. And we have to help Greece as much as we can.
Ted's a hero. We want to thank him again. And I totally second everything that Charlie said. We're so grateful that he does what he does and that he's been doing it for all these years. And maybe, Bob, if you can just also give out a shout out of where people can donate. I know you'll have it somewhere on the screen, but if you want to maybe articulate it now or not.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to edit it. They do have, there is the California Samaritan Foundation is the foundation that Ted Karnezes started, and to raise money in the United States to be able to send. That way, it's tax deductible and all of that, and then then that money gets bundled and sent over to Greece to buy Christmas gifts for the children. It's specifically directed to that. He's been doing it every year for easily 20 years. I mean, he and I, when he owned Ted's Place, his restaurant, he and I would sit and I'd write him a check every year, and he'd do a dinner dance and all of this and raise quite a bit of money. He has an interesting story that we're going to do. So we're doing a series of fundraisers. And so in this particular one, what we'll do is we'll post the link when this video posts to where you can contribute. It'll be down there. It's already on on the Facebook site. Aurora has done a message about it. What do we call it? We call it public service announcement.
Yes, public service announcement.
About it. And we're on Tuesday. We're gonna do a kind of like a bigger show around it too. There's Angelie and Alexon is flying in from Las Vegas, and she's going to come to my home, and she's going to she's got 250,000 followers, so she's going to do.
That's great. That's great.
And do some stuff and try and help raise money as well. So we're kind of doing this whole, and during our Christmas show, Julie Massino is going to be on there, and part of that Christmas show is really dedicated to raising money for this as well. And we've got a few things lined up to try and kind of help this help raise money before Christmas. And I'm so grateful that I've got friends like Charley and Vlas and Michael and Adam, old friends and new friends that were able to, break away from their busy schedules to come on and create some content that we can put out and kind of get people interested in it and showcase this.
It's a pleasure.
It's our honor. Thank you. And it was a real pleasure meeting you both, and and just wishing you the best of luck, and stay healthy, please, and sending out our best wishes for now and for the new year.
Likewise. Thank you very much to everyone for being here.
And congratulations on renewing your series.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
That's our mother's prayers that were answered.
We'll be watching.
Please do. Thank you. Real pleasure. Thanks again. A pleasure again, and
Buddy,
appreciate it.
thank you. I'm grateful to all of you. All right.
Thank
Good stuff, Bob. Be well. Say hi to everybody.
Have Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I know.
Hey, how you guys doing? Merry Christmas.
Hey, Merry Christmas, Charlie. Thank
I
you
love
so
your
much.
message.
Oh, there's a little bit of an echo. Should I throw in some headphones?
We don't hear an echo on our side. Do you hear? Are we too loud? Can you hear us okay?
Now I hear you perfectly. Before there was like an echo there.
Oh, okay. Let's talk for a second. What do you say? Something?
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Are we okay?
Yeah, no, now it's gone. Now it's gone.
Okay, good,
I
good.
guess, yeah.
Oh, there's Adam. Let me bring Adam on. Adam.
Hello.
Hello.
It's us.
Hello, Charles. Hello, Bob. Hello, Aurora.
Good. We're doing well. How are you?
Not bad, thanks.
Good.
I'm not used to early,
Yeah.
but
We're not used
but
to
I have my coffee here, so it's okay.
Oh, good,
There you
good.
go.
I have my tsipuru here. So
Bob, I'm gonna just log out and log back in. It's acting really wonky, so I'll be right back.
okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
So it's 9 o'clock there.
Yeah, 9 in the evening, but it's funny when I go to Greece, I'm up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But here, staying up past 10 o'clock is pushing it for me. Yeah.
I'm used to sleeping late, like always after 12 for sure.
Yeah.
How are we sounding now, Charlie?
Weird.
You're
Signome, I don't know. It's keeps breaking up, but I hope.
really?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you okay. Adam, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you, yeah.
Huh.
Or do you want to put a
You know
headset
what?
on?
Yeah, or I wonder. I'm in the other room, but I might just go back into the office I work in. Maybe the connection in here is not as good.
We can
I'll be
hear you
right
well.
back, Bob. Signome, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay. Yeah, but you need to hear us too because it's conversation. So yeah.
Let me just try the other room. Sorry,
Okay.
guys.
No worries.
No worries.
Hey, thank you, Adam, for doing this. I know everybody's busy right now, and
It's our pleasure.
yeah, but
I'm working now on a documentary series for the Greek Revolution for Greek TV.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. Which revolution?
1821.
I like that one. That's my favorite.
Hey,
Hey, Vlas, how are you?
hi. How are you? How you doing? How's it going? Good time.
Adam, meet Vlas. Adam is the cinematographer and director.
That's fantastic. Thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
No, we thank you as well.
Yeah,
It's a good time for a cup of coffee,
yeah.
especially
So-
Greek coffee. That's always welcome.
They call you Vlas or Vlasis?
Vlasis, Vlas, whatever. Otina Piovkova.
You guys were born in USA or?
Yeah. Yes, we were born in New Jersey. We lived in Greece for 1 year. Mitera Mas was born and raised, in Greece. Είναι από την Πάτρα, και ο πατέρας και η μητέρα.
Okay.
But the lineage traces further back to Asia Minor before Patra, on both sides actually. And so when my mother and father got married, they moved to the U.S. Prearranged marriage.
Perfect. That's the way
Very
they
romantic.
pictures that way.
I love the Christmas ornaments. It's nice to see them, Bob.
Thank you. Yeah, we're doing a Christmas show this Saturday with Julie Massino. Do you know Julie Massino? Have you heard the name from Fame Story?
Yeah, that's that's great. Good for you, but that's fantastic. How'd you get her?
She reached out to us.
Oh, good.
She liked one of the shows. She said, I had like a 90-minute conversation with her yesterday, and she's such a sweet woman. I mean, just wonderful. But she says, normally I don't reach out to people, but you guys have such a sweet show. You know? And
What a
she's,
nice compliment, and so true.
oh,
It's
thank
all
you.
Aurora. It has nothing to do with you, Bob.
It's got
She's
you don't
sweet.
know the hashtag Bob Who is trending, you know, so so it's and there we have Charlie. Hi, Charlie.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is much better. Sorry about that.
Oh,
I
good,
apologize, guys.
Hey, no
Michael, nice
worries.
to meet you. Karika.
Likewise.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah.
I didn't get to say hello either. How are you?
Yeah, you were engaged in discussion.
And Adam, you do a very good job. You're a very good host. I watch your videos all the time, actually. So this is very serendipitous. You do a very good job on camera.
You now, Bob. Make sure you got to live up to it.
I know. I told him I don't even you know, when I interviewed Michael is the presenter and the writer of the show.
Oh, Michael's the one on camera. Oh, I didn't even recognize that. Wow.
Yeah.
I look good too. Thank you.
Yes.
Ah.
No, and
Good about that.
Adam is the cinematographer and director. So he's
Editor and director mostly. Yeah.
But
Bob,
Bob,
the last video was very well.
Get it right, Bob.
Yeah. It half in shadow. I liked how it was filmed. So you guys both did a good job, and I think that confused me.
yeah. Well, I'm way out of my league with these guys here, Aurora.
We'll figure
I
it
am.
out. We'll get there.
So this is why I'm going to make myself disappear through most of this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is an introduction, and then I'm going to do a kind of a shout out to the California Samaritan Foundation, which is Ted Karnez's foundation. I think you guys are aware of this. And
That's great, guy.
yeah, he is, and it all goes to the SOS Children's Villages, and I think Adam and Michael, you guys are aware of the SOS Children's Villages in Greece, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, it's kind of a big thing there, and then I'll introduce you guys, and then it'll be because there's because it looks better with 4 images on screen. I'll be that voice. What do they call that voice when you bring God down from above?
Yeah,
And
the voice of God. The voice
what
of
is it
God.
in Greek? There's a term for that in cinema, in plays. Theos
Divine intervention.
invention. Yeah. So I'll be that invisible. I'll be that invisible voice, because that way we'll have like just the 4 of you guys up there, and so it's going to be pre-recorded. So we'll edit it and then get it out, and there'll be a donate button to the foundation. Okay.
That's great.
And just so, I mean, you guys know who everybody is. You know, Michael and Adam have been doing this YouTube channel, Ancient Greece Revisited, which I love that. They mix philosophy in with mythology, and it's just been terrific. And of course, Charley and Vlas are the creators of Blood of Zeus, the Netflix show, which has been renewed for a 2nd season. So
I'm so excited.
I'm so glad it was, because I could only answer so many of those questions from fans that were, commenting. Did it get renewed? Did it get renewed? I don't know. I'll ask.
I have to say, I only started watching it this week, so I haven't finished it.
That's okay.
No
That's
spoilers today, gentlemen. No spoilers. So, so I'm
I
gonna
do have one question. Can I ask?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys have merch for Blood of Zeus?
Nothing official yet. They are, Netflix is working on that. There's some bootleg merch on different websites that we've seen, but actually Netflix they're working on getting a soundtrack out, and then they're going to do some merchandising, but they're not up and running yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Well, let us know when that is,
Yeah, I
because
want-
it would have been great for
Oh,
Christmas.
Yeah, darn.
Yeah, all that blood and the
Yeah. and food.
Are you involved in the animation at all, or not?
We are only involved in the sense that we, they show us designs and animatics, and then we weigh in. What's great too is that you can, in the thumbnail stage, you can kind of still manipulate scenes and reorder stuff. We would move lines from different scenes around. So, we're involved, but we're not there on the day-to-day basis. We kind of come in when they're ready to show us.
Okay, cool.
How did you guys decide to do what you're doing now?
It's all Michael.
Well, let's get to that. I want to, you know what? Let's get into it, because she and I already did the introduction.
Like 5 times.
We did it like 5
We have
times.
some bloopers.
So we've got a blooper reel already set
On accident.
because we were doing it. We've been on the show for about 40 minutes trying to kind of nail down the introduction.
I think
So,
we got it.
I think we did.
I think let's jump in.
Yeah,
I
you
like
want to
that.
just jump
Yeah,
in?
yeah.
Okay. We got it. We'll do it at the end. I think you guys, the reason I wanted to do this was because, the part that I didn't do, no, you know what? I got to do the whole thing, because I just saw, I want to introduce Asia Minor Pictures, Netflix hit show, all of that. I'm sorry. I got to do, well, let me do that. And then we'll be back.